Give me one in the chat. It might help if I hit the button. Give me one in the chat if y'all can hear me. Give me one in the chat if y'all can hear me. Give me one in the chat if y'all can hear me. I appreciate y'all. PBO struggle streaming. PBO struggle streaming. I appreciate y'all for joining. My help if I hit the button. I'm like, what's going on? Oh my God. It's gonna get better. I promise. I promise. Yeah, shout out to the patients. I think they were up by 6. I just picked them. So let's go ahead and get this AWS on there. You know how we do it. You got any tech or cybersecurity? Tech or cybersecurity, you know how we do it. Just drop the questions in the box. PBO's tired. We're gonna make it short tonight. You know how we do it. If anybody wants to come up, just let me know. We talking about Landing Zone. They didn't have a AWS image for it, so we're gonna delve into it and talk about it. Very important, especially at the mid to senior level. This is what they believe is a well-architected environment to run federal and government work. So we're going to delve into it. Then the next step is, this is kind of raw. They got it in GitHub. You can actually run Terraform or CloudFormation to build it. Next week, we're going to talk about Amazon Tower. And inside Tower, it's a automated control tower. It's an automated service of the landing zone. And we got some slides in there to talk about and what's the differences is. Yep, it does help. I watch it count down. For some reason, I thought I pressed it. I pressed the button already. So you know how PBO struggle streaming. I did some practicing. Facts. So I don't know what was going on. I had the music going. I had it. I just never hit the go live button. So I don't know what's wrong with me tonight. You know me. I'm always struggle streaming. So I appreciate everybody for joining. Let's hit it. Shout out to Study GRC. You know, I'm hanging out with those guys. They're doing great things over there. Shout out to my man Chris Whitlock, definitely helping the old people out. I be struggling in Discord. Shout out to Chris for helping the old guys out in Discord. I'm always late in Discord. But we're going to make it happen today. We're going to make it happen. He's struggle streaming. So we're going to make it happen. So let's see. Let's keep it going. I'm sure everybody's watching the game. That'd be a good matchup, man. The Pacers versus the Knicks. I guess I didn't see our team gelling like that, to be honest. So I might try to get some tickets. I know they're gonna be astronomical for the playoffs. One of my homies does corporate tickets, so I know they're gonna be out the wazoo. I didn't oversleep. PBO didn't hit the button. Shout out for all the ones. Once PBO hit the button, he was ready to go. Whew. I love practicing. Let's see if I have a dozen questions. If I'm stand up, I'll drop the link. We can go through the questions as we walk through it. I'll do that, Chris, because you know PBO can multitask. I'm Alan Bison. I'm a risk analyst trying to get the knowledge of AWS Cloud, so I'll be able to conduct a proper assessment of cloud infrastructure. What AWS certifications do you recommend? Off the top of my head, I would just go by the book. I would do the practitioner. I would do the associate architect. I would do the AWS security. And depending on what area of assessments you want to do, if you're doing more with the developers, I would get the AWS developers. If you're doing more infrastructure, VPCing, work with the cloud engineer, I will get the AWS SysOps. Most people know I have 5 AWS certs. I have the practitioner, just under getting your feet wet. I got the associate architect, associate developer, associate sysop, and I had an AWS security specialty. I'm thinking about getting the data engineer one probably. So if you go back on my stream, I probably got 40 AWS where I talk about the individual services. I have probably 3 or 4 videos talking about using AWS and doing assessments on our environments for small companies and federal clients. So if you go back through my live playlist, Benson, you'll see a ton of them out there. Let me drop the link real quick. If you want to come up, if you want to come up, Chris, you can. If anybody wants to come up, though, I know Chris. So you could come up and we can just, as I do this, you can just throw your questions in. I appreciate you for staying up a little later with the late night PBO. If you want to go ahead and come up, Chris, you don't have to. No pressure. You know how we do it. But yeah, that's my thing. Is most of because when I was working for a large state agency, 80% of our vendors were coming in was in the cloud. Probably 80% of the 80% was AWS. Then they were doing Azure. Then I saw a lot of multi-cloud. So I'm always doing risk assessments on cloud vendors. If you look too, I have a third-party assessments too, playlists out there where I talk about doing risk assessments on cloud vendor events. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat, or if you want to come up, you can. Let's get going. I'm just going to jump through this. This is a bad slide. I would get in trouble with Dr. Ozier. The Landing Zone Accelerator is an architecture aligned with the AWS best practices in conformance with multiple global compliances. We recommend customers deploy the AWS Control Tower. We just talked about that. Control Tower is the managed version of AWS Landing Zone, right? That's really what we're going to talk about next. We can kind of put a bow on it, then run some labs. What I looked at, if you spin up a Control Tower, and like it's going to be $400 a month, so I got to figure out how to cut that down. Shout out to CPN. They do the CMMC. There was a AWS consultant out there, and I think he said he could give people credits if they were live. And so I might reach out to CPN. Shout out to those guys doing the CMMC work as a foundational landing zone and enhance their landing zone capabilities with the accelerator. This complementary capabilities provides a no-code solution across 35 plus AWS services to manage and govern. This is the thing, multi-account environment built in to support customers with highly regulated workloads and complex requirements. That's us with complex requirements, CMC, HIPAA, high trust. Shout out to Study GRC. They were really doing a HIPAA and high trust. They were really digging in that. They had my man come on there. He was high trust. I don't know, SME. He was running the high trust, their accreditation board. So shout out to him. So if we want to do that right, AWS recommends the Landing Zone Accelerator, right? And next week, we're going to talk about Control Tower. It's the managed version of that. And we talked about this, the AWS Cloud Development Kit. You can install it directly into your environment. We talked about AWS Config a couple weeks ago. I think 2 weeks ago, we talked about Security Hub. We talked about the VPC. We talking about the AWS network. But from our perspective, right? What's up, Ty? Appreciate you for joining us. We talking about putting all these together, and me and Chris was talking about this. AWS has a lot of services. So how do you, like they said, put together for best practices? AWS says you spin this up, and they give you a couple of switches to pick from, but this is the best practices for setting up an AWS environment in a short form, where a lot of times it might take you 3 or 6 months to actually figure out what you want to do for your environment. You can spin this up in 2 or 3 days and kind of get you, we used to call it scaffolding, right? Best practices, best of breed of environment, especially from a federal setup, right? And that's what we talk about. We're doing big systems for big money. So that's what we want to live in, right? How do you set it up for a big client? So that's what we're trying to focus on. So let's keep rolling. Once again, you know how we do it. If you got any questions, just drop them in the chat. This is the architecture of that, right? Shout out to Ty. This made me think of my man Ty's down there. He was asking me about what is the best practices for networking. So if you look in the middle, they are talking about how would you set up for their standard networking environment. You see there they have their on-prem. Then they got their transit gateway. That's really a direct connect from your corporate actually into your AWS region, into your AWS. You see it up there, VPC and your firewall setup. So it shows you the firewall. Up there, you got your third-party IDS and IPS. So that could be Defender, that could be Mandiant, that could be, I mean, there's a ton of whatever you're using in your corporate. A lot of times you want to run that in your cloud so you can be seamless from your on-prem to your cloud. Your private subnet, what's in your private subnets? That's your web server, app server, your databases. There is a transit gateway, your sub A and B. Then if you look right to the right, those are your workloads. Those are your accounts. Like you got a development account, a test account, production application account. So once again, this is what, when you spin up Landing Zone, this is what you're going to build, right? And when your assessments, shout out to my man who came in, Benson was talking about, I'm going to highlight him right there. This is what you should be recommending setting up, and this is what you should be able to do an assessment on, right? Because this is really the best practices. So most companies, especially mid to large size companies, right? Because this is multi-cap. This is what they're going to be running. Like I was at companies, that's what they said. Hey, we want you to set up the landing zone, right? Like they got different versions for HIPAA, CMC, but the basis of it is this, right? Shout out to my man Ty, right? Yeah, he was asking me some networking questions. So this is the basic networking, right? Your subnets, your or different networking. Right there is availability zone. So you could be in Chicago. Availability zone is just a data center. So usually you run 2 data centers. So if your data center A goes down, your B is going to be running. Then there's transit gateway is which accounts can get to which VPCs. A lot of times your VPCs in one account, but you can have 5 or 6 VPCs that you build in there for different divisions, different development, and different workloads. They don't have to be in one networking subnet, right? Which just takes me a little, because usually when I build a subnet, I'm building it for a company. They build subnets for workloads and different services you're running. Then your different VPCs and subnets can communicate with each other. But of course, your VPC is a logical separation for different devices, right? So you don't want your development environment to be touching your production, right? Because you got developers in the environment. Sometimes your developers aren't in production. There's no need for them to be seeing customers SSCing. Now your DevOps might and your security might, but not your everyday developers. So when I worked at DoD, we had 500 developers. Probably only 20 of them could get in production. Right now we have people to build in production, but you know that's separations of duties. So let's kind of hit it at the high level. Once again, you see the VPC, you see your work areas, and if you go to the top, you see your managed services. We talked about AWS Org, Cloud Formation before. PBO need glasses. The pipeline is how you build it. Then your audit accounts. We talked about these in different weeks. We talked about Security Hub, AWS Config, and Guard Duty. So that's your security feed and your audit team, right? So then right next to there is logging. So each one of those work areas, you're gonna log there, but then that's kind of where your SIM's gonna be in your log archive account. Because once your logs get there, you want to take them off those VMs, your database. Because if a hacker gets on there, they can delete the logs if the logs is on the same box in the same VM. So we want to move them, right? Not that we would get hacked. We doing the best things, but sometimes separate. So once again, you want to make sure you separate those. And that's where your login is going to be at. And at the bottom, you have your shared services. You have your external access to VPCs. Once again, you see your public subnet, your private subnet, and your transit gateways. What accounts can get to what subnets. Then right next there is your shared service VPCs. So a lot of times in your shared services, you probably have Your local logging would be there, so your developers wouldn't have to come and bother you for logs. Once again, external logging. So what things would you share once again with your whole organization? But once again, this is you saw best practices, and from an assessment, that's what I need to understand is because if it's not like this, then obviously we're kind of deviating from best practices. So the question is, why are we doing it, right? If it's that could be a reason, but the best things if you start with best practices, and most companies are going to start with this because they're just starting, right? So it makes it easier if you say this is AWS best practices, and that's where we're going to start out. Once again, this is what Landing Zone creates when you run it. Once again, next week I'm hoping to run Control Tower. I got to figure out how to get that price down, but we're going to dig into it. Once again, if you got any questions, put them in the chat, tech or cybersecurity, and we'll definitely get to them. I ain't gonna say shocked, but for that's a lot of services and a lot of accounts for a best practice of just spinning up, right? A lot of times you deal stuff in labs, so you're just dealing with pieces of it. But once again, when you look at the holistic part of it, um, which makes sense. So AWS Accelerator, the cost of running the solution. You saw what the basic cost is to run it in there. No activities or workload is approximately $430.22. I was like, ooh, that's a little too much for me to lab every month. So I got to figure out how to get that down, right? Now, if it was 130, I might run it. If it was even 200, I might run it. 500, ooh, 430, that's a little high. So I got to figure out how to get that down. Understanding the security considerations of the solution, we're going to dig into that. Know how to plan for quotas in your solution. So part of the governance we talk about is development. One of the quotas is you can only spend up to $200 a month in your development area. If it goes beyond that, a manager or your supervisor will get an email, right? You can have it too, where if it gets above this, we can have the environment shut down. But what kind of quotas? How big a database can you have? You get charged about how many queries you're having, how many reads and writes you have in the database. So you can set up those quotas where if it goes over that, right, it will shut that down. Now you probably don't want to do that in production, but definitely in development. Now, which regions are supported for your solution? I think most of the regions have landing zones. A lot of regions do not have control tower, but we're gonna get to that. View or download the AWS CloudFormation template, including this solution to automatically deploy the infrastructure resources, the stack we were just looking at. So what is CloudFormation template? We talk about infrastructure as code. If you know a Terraformer, it's just YAML code to say, this is what our VPC looks like. These are the accounts it's going to build. Transit gateways, these accounts are going to be able to read these VPC. So CloudFormation is basically in code what your environment's going to look like. And that's the cool thing is once you build it, you can keep those templates up and document them, right? And two is you can take those templates. If somebody changed something in production that's not in those templates, it's called drift. It'll let you know if somebody put something in development or production, but didn't use the scripts, right? So number one, you might be able to let that go if it's emergency, but that lets you know somebody's not doing the proper process for your environment. So deploy this solution in configuration that supports specific region or industry. Cloud Landing Zone Accelerator solution page. We got some screenshots for there. Know how to troubleshoot common areas. The cool thing is, since AWS sells this in consultants, you can always call AWS support, as long as you don't stray too far from, once again, the best practices of AWS. And they have the Cloud Development Kit, aka the Cloud Formations, and I think I got a screenshot in the GitHub. Where is it located at in GitHub? Important. This solution will not by itself make you compliant. It provides a foundational infrastructure for which additional complementary solutions can be integrated. This information contained in this solution implementation guide is not exhaustive. You must review, evaluate, assess, and approve solutions in compliance with your organization, security feature tools, and configuration. It's solely responsibility of you and your organization to determine which regulatory requirements are applicable to ensure you comply with all requirements. Although this solution discusses both technical and administrative requirements, this solution does not help you comply with non-technical administrative requirements. So what's a non-technical? Breach notification, configuration management plan, COOP plans, right? Those are non-technical plans you need to have. But basically, they says uh, it's your fault if you're not compliant, right? This is their CYA, right? But there are non-technical compliance you have to get with. So they just put it out there. Come on, Chris, don't be scared. I know. I'm with you. We got to figure that out. Shout out to Sierra. Thanks for joining us again. Yeah, I thought that was a little. I'm have to reach out to their AWS consultant. I was with CPN, the CMMC guy you interviewed. He was talking about using the landing zone to get you CMMC certified. Yeah, with that's with no activity in it too, Chris. That's just basically scaffolding and a shell. It's 430. I'm like, there was something in there, and I think I got a screenshot of it that was super expensive. So I'm gonna see if I could cut that piece out. Most of it was like 8, 4, 5, and some in there was like 200-300. So I gotta figure out. I didn't know if it was a transit gateway. I gotta figure out what that was. Yeah, it was a little expensive, Chris. Yeah, I was with you on that, Chris. Usually the money don't bother me, but that was a little bigger than normal. I was like 430. Then this is the management account. Once again, with the log account, the management account, you use your cloud formation, goes to your pipeline, pulls it from your GitHub. It goes out to your build, then it builds it. The part of the build, you get an SNS, which is a text notification. KMS is your encryption keys. Once again, your code pipeline, it builds it all in the S3 bucket. Once again, in your GitHub, you run your zones and your accelerators. It actually builds the project for you. 7 is deploy to stages. Account creation and management for the control tower drift. We were talking about that. You use Amazon Event Bridge, Lambda, step function as Amazon DB. If you look in there, I've done videos on, I think, each one of those services. I think I've done everything on there, probably except step functions. So we're going to need to get that. 8 is where you logging it. So you're going to have your VPC. We were looking at, but your VPCs is taking them off those VMs, even if you run in Windows. It's going to push those logs over to your log archive account. Once again, so you're going to go to Amazon Kinesis data stream. We probably could do something probably like a Lambda, because that's if you're pumping big petabytes through, like you're a big company. Using Amazon data fire hose, once again, it saves that information. The accelerator logs in the S3 bucket, the access logs, and the ELB, elastic load balancer logs. All that stuff is encrypted using KMS keys. Then from your log archive account, you have your audit account. Shout out to GRC. You use Event Bridge and Lambda. It moves all those logs into a centralized bucket. Once again, encrypted, so GRC can look at them. Once again, separating them up. But that's from your management account to your log archive account to your audit account. Once again, Landing Zone is doing best practices and building you this multi-account best practices for your organization. So us as GRC, since it's best practices, we need to understand this at least at a high level. Shout out to my man Benson. So we know what to audit, we know what to look for, right? When we look at our AWS config, once it looks through and it says, well, you don't have an audit account, or you don't have a log archive account, or some logs aren't in your centralized logging bucket, you know what those findings are in that services, and you know where to look, right? And why is it not built, and where it should be located at, and what rights should be there. So let's see. I prefer that. Nah, facts. That's hard for me to argue with you there, Chris. Nah, but you need to learn some of this so you can get some money in your pocket, right? So there's a couple ways to look at it. So we're trying to keep it in our pocket, but we need to learn these skills so we know where to look. So we'll be able to get those new skills so we can get those higher paying jobs. So that's part of it too. But like you said, though, I agree with you. That's a little pricey. That's a little pricey. Some of the basic services we were looking for that's coming from the Landing Zone Accelerator. Of Cloud Formation Watch. We saw those in the architectural design build, DynamoDB, Event Bridge. I've probably done 90% of those YouTube videos to talk about those different services, but I usually talk about them as standalone. Um, then the supported service, load balancer, auto scaling, budget and scaling, EBS, guard duty, Lambda, Macy. I don't think I've done a network firewall video, so that's something I want to work on. Network load balancer. I've done Route 53, resource management. But once again, this is all the stuff that AWS Landing Zone set up, once again, for best practices for a company, mid-level, or once again, doing federal workloads. Let's see if there's any questions in there. I appreciate you, LinkedIn user. Drop the link if anybody want to come up. I don't know if Chris falling asleep, but we're going to catch me later. But I'm usually hanging out with those guys anyway, so it's all good. So once again, those are some of the standard services you see, services you run. Services we need to become familiar. So when we do our risk assessment, our assessment, either from a security perspective, risk assessment, or governance risk and compliance, we need to understand those services at a basic level and how they work together really with Landing Zone. The management account, once again, control tower events, Amazon Event Bridge. We talked a little bit about that. Control tower, the drift management. We talked a little about that, where you take your cloud formation, you put it against your production, and it tell you if something's in your production that's not in your scripts. That means they didn't get built from your scripts. That drift is what's different. All right, so that's a good thing to have, because once again, you can see if somebody's breaking your process and your procedures and how stuff runs. Cloud formation, once again, the AWS Cellular pipeline. It goes through step functions. We talk about accounts. How do you build accounts? Creates your account for your organization accounts. We talked about organizations last week. Then it takes those accounts and write them to, you see it right there, DynamoDB tables. Accelerator config, GovCloud account mapping, new accounts and new org. So it keeps track of it. So if you need to rebuild it or roll it back, you can pull those from the DynamoDB tables, because that's once again how it tells if it drifts. After there, it builds an AWS service catalog. The catalog just says in your organization, you can give your developers or organizations your catalog so they know what services you approve for them to run. Right? There's so many services, but how would you know if you were on a team or in a division? You give out AWS service catalogs for different divisions for the services they're approved to run. So they pick it out of catalog and say, I want to spin up a database. They can only spin up a certain size for a certain dollar amount. We want to spin up a user with this type of job functions. They just pick it out the catalog. Right, then the AWS Organization API, if you want to spin up different divisions or different business unit in those divisions, AWS org is an AU, and I'm sorry, an OU. That's just an organizational unit, and what can it do? What accounts are in there? Then what accounts are in control of what AWS services? And we'll go back and look at the big one, right, and kind of drill down a little more. But that's kind of, if you see it at the top, account creations. A lot of times when, especially smaller companies I interview, they say, well, how are you going to create new accounts? What's the process for that? What do you recommend that from an organizational unit? What would that look like? I think this is my man, probably Chris, I seen. He's talking before I still got him on mute. I'm going to keep him in the back for a little while. No, what's up?
Oh, yeah, that's fine. You could keep me in the back. I mean, I was just cursing you anyways, you know.
No, it's all good.
8:30 at night, PVO.
It's 9:30 my time. You younger than me, man. What are you crying about? Toughen up. What are you crying about? No, I'm just playing. I am a little late. Go ahead and throw some questions in while I'm great. Switch to the next slide. What you got for me? I know you're trying to go to bed. What you got?
It's just extremely confusing to me, considering all of the different services that are involved.
Facts.
I think that's one of the biggest issues with AWS is that you have to use so many different services. And I don't think did you show a diagram for like a real world installation, like utilizing
I
that?
did. I did. Here, let's go back to the top. I know I was. This is what they recommend for a medium or federal client. This is when you run their landing zone or control towers, the managed version. This is what you're going to set up. So once again,
That's a lot of different services
I know,
products to be using.
I know. But you got to think though, if you're, especially if you're running a federal setup for federal compliance, CMMC, HIPAA, and high trust, you got to put all those and run best practices, right? So, no, I agree with you. When I first looked at it, I was kind of like, oh, because you got your on-prem. Once again, your direct connect is your going through your telecom vendor directly connecting to your tenant in AWS. And then that tenant, you go through your firewall VPC, the third-party IDS, kind of walk through it. If you look to the right, those are your workload accounts, development, tests, and production applications gets created with these users. At the top, you have your management account, which makes sense. Your auditing account, which is security tools, which is us. Then you have your log archive. So all these workloads, they're going to have log files. You don't want them on the same box. This is basically set it up to go to your SIM, really. Instead of going to your SIM, they take all those logs in the S3 bucket. In real life, Kinesis was sent into your S3 bucket and into your Splunk, your Elk Cache. I'm trying to think of some other ones. There's a ton of whatever your SIM.
Graylog.
Yeah, Graylog. So right, so that'll be your log archive account. And at the bottom is if you have shared accounts. All right, you see down there you got Active Directory, collaborative tools, different containers in your shared service VPC. And if you got external access VPC to third-party accounts, if you're a bank, you might have a check clearing cache, LexisNexis. If you checking people's credit score, those could be your external access. And I agree with you, but this makes sense when you're talking about a complex, medium-sized, or large companies. This is kind of stuff they set up, right? This is not for a small company. This is for the big dogs. But I agree with you. That's why I went over a lot of these servers individually, so now we can put them together and scaling up. Go ahead to that.
Yeah, you make it sound a lot simpler than it looks.
Oh, facts. I got a few years on you. So yeah,
are you going to do a complete series on actually setting that up in AWS then?
If I could get it cheaper than $430.
That's a good point.
That's my only thing. Once again, you remember the guy Derek you interviewed? I was actually talking to their AWS consultant. I think he said I could get some credits. So I'm gonna reach out to him.
Bam.
If I could roll it for 200, 225, I run at 430. I'm like, ooh, we're gonna have to do it all in a month. But yeah, I would hope to run it once again. And we're gonna look at the slide coming up. This is the log ones. We really drilling down in different sections of that best practices. One of your core workloads, and once again, takes your Cloud Watch, which is one of your logging tools, and it pushes once again to your centralized logging. And as you see it over there with your centralized logging buckets. And the second part of that is we will push it to our SIM from there. Once again, the cloud formation builds all of this from the pipeline.
So does AWS not have a built-in SIM too?
It does. Their SIM, I call it a local SIM, is cloud watch logs, but you only get to save stuff out there maybe at 6 months or at the most.
Oh, wow.
Then you got to push it. They do have a SIM. My man said it last time. I said LCache, Open Search. They have Open Search that you can use for it. But I think they set it up like this because most people already have a SIM. But they do have Open Search if you want to run an AWS SIM. And two, they have their third parties, so you can spin up in their third party. Once again, you can spin up Splunk or any of the big dogs in there for a fee.
And so this is largely just based off of like what they would typically expect you to be doing, but you could make this a lot more simplistic depending on your environment, right?
You can 100%, but I think for their perspective, once again, especially from a federal client, and if it's a federal client, I think it's going to be some size, so this is what they recommend. But yeah, definitely, if you were smaller, you could do Lambdas instead of Amazon Kinesis. And this log buckets, you can actually send them to Glacier to make them a little cheaper.
Yeah,
What's
see,
up,
that sounds like
Jupiter?
the PBO I know. Going off and finding the cheaper route here. See, we could
Well,
do this on a budget here.
you can, but what I like to do at first is because the government got money, they're gonna go after recommendation, right? So I at least want to understand it because most of my questions, especially in the federal space, is gonna be based on this, right? So,
Mhm.
but definitely, I always want to be able to go big. But like you said, if you're a smaller company, you definitely ain't gonna run Kinesis and Firehose. I'd probably take those out and just run a basic Lambda because your logs aren't gonna be that big because you're not doing that many transactions, right? So you would definitely take that out. Um, I would just go from Lambda straight into my log buckets. Really, I probably would just take Kinesis out. But like I said, you're not gonna be strict because for a small company, you might do 1,000 transactions a day. This expects you to, I think, be doing 1,000,000 transactions in an hour type stuff. So I think that's why they set it up with the big
Yeah,
guys.
that's a big difference in
Yeah,
scale.
yeah. What's up, Jupiter?
No much, just listening on, and I'm just like I
No, you
said,
good.
I'm learning some of this cloud stuff, architects and stuff. Is it the same as all cloud is basically the same, whether it's Azure or AWS?
Yeah, they all have some form of this, but yeah, they just usually have different names. But if you look at a lot of these services are the same in both. Let's
Yeah,
see.
that's all. I'm just like I said, I'm just learning. There's so much, it's the same architect whether you're doing legacy systems. That's what it's
Yeah,
pretty much looking like, but it's just all centralized when you're using, cloud though, which make it convenient.
yeah. Then once again, Chris, we were talking about your management accounts, right? So we setting up the different accounts really for your different teams and who control the account. So your management accounts, you build and you get your keys. You handling all accounts. So you got your KMS, your S3 keys, which is your bucket, Lambdas, which is your serverless code, CloudWatch is where we send in our logs, session management keys. EBS is basically file systems in your Linux or your Windows. So these are the keys you're going to use in those accounts to encrypt your data. The log archive account. Once again, the keys to encrypt it. Then your audit account, what we're dealing with. We're going to assume those roles. You see it right there, cross and count rows. So you assume that role and your system managers. Then once again, you can change your audit switches. And once again, you're encrypting those that data in your audit account. So this is your management accounts for managing all your accounts, and it just shows you your encryption keys of what you're doing in those different services. And to be honest, I would never think about keeping all those keys in different accounts a lot of times, which makes sense because if you get hacked, you want your hackers to be able to go somewhere else to try to steal those keys to encrypt that data. So once again, best practices. But shout out to Chris again. It's a lot in there. So I'm trying to get comfortable with. So one of the things I get asked a lot of times is creating accounts in that particular architecture. So they have something called the account vending machine. So once again, we talked about the AWS service catalog. These are the services people can pick, or you can have your tier one people create accounts. They would actually run this vending machine. So if they're in accounting, they would pick the AWS service catalog for accounting. The account vending machine would say, okay, this is what AWS organization you were in. In those accounts, do you get access to the current accounts or a particular OU organizational unit? 9 times out of 10, we're going to have an accounting organizational unit that they would get built in. Then in there, would tell them these are the security roles. This is where your stuff gets audited. This is where your stuff gets logged. These are the account baselines. And those accounts, what division you in, what pay code you in, what things you can do. And two is what network we're going to set you in there. You see what network baseline, and in that network baseline, what shared networks in. So usually we have an accounting network, and in that accounting network, you could probably get to manufacturing, you could probably get to HR, you probably wouldn't be able to get to development, right? Why is accounting looking at development? So that account will tell you once again what's your network baseline and what's your shared account. And we'll go back and look at that master architecture because that networking stuff a lot of times I just take for granted about what that is.
And is that by leveraging VPCs on there,
Yeah,
or?
yeah, it's
Okay.
VPC, and we'll look at them. I think it was on the other side. So on that network baseline in that account, I might have 10 VPCs for different organizations, right? So I might have accounting and management VPC. I probably have a development VPC. I probably have a production VPC. So I'm gonna have multiple virtual private clouds in there, depending on what your workload is. Then the transit gateway is which VPCs can talk to who, right? So some of those VPCs can talk to some, and some of them won't be able to talk to others, right? From security,
It's
right?
kind of like it, having a switch in the cloud, right?
Yep, that's what it is, and you just building it, all right? That's basically what it is. It's a switch, and your switches let you see what subnets you can get to, but you're building that through software. And over there, once again, account creation, user interface, account baseline, launch constraints, apply the baseline and stack sets, create network baseline, apply account security control policy, right? So that is the governance of what you can do in certain VPCs, right? You can't start up VMs in certain. If you're in accounting, you shouldn't be firing up any VMs for development, right? So I'll say in there, you can't spin up databases, VMs, or anything in there. You can run these apps, and that's how you can run because you're accounting. You're not doing development work. So that's where the governance comes in, is those security control policies. Once again, I think the VPC, the transit gateway, that was the most. So I got to figure out how to cut that down. They say 14 endpoints, one availability zone at 3 gigabytes. I'm not running that much. 102. That comes out to 175, and that was a lot of the 430. So I need to figure out if I can cut my VPCs and my transit gateways down to get it to a manageable price. Because, like, shout out to Chris at 430 and 22 cents. That was a little pricey for a lab. So I got to figure out if I could control that. Once again, we'll look at that a little more next week. Is control tower. They have settings you can set. So hopefully I can set. Maybe I could get away with 7 endpoints and get that number down to 175. The cool thing is this kind of lists out what the prices are. Security Hub, like I said, I'm running Security Hub right now for $8. And I got one account, but I ain't got 30,000 checks because I shut down all my VMs and my Windows virtual machines until I need to run them. So I think I pay like $8 for it. So once again, we're gonna look at it, see if we can cut that down. I'm gonna reach out to CPN, the CMMC guys. Once again, I was talking to the AWS consultant. I think I can get some credits from him. Any questions, fellas? I'm kind of flowing.
No, I'm just listening.
All right, what you got, Chris?
I'm just hoping that you throw that money out there so that way the community doesn't have to. You can just do it live, PBO. You got this.
I don't. Whew, that 430 now. If it was 2, I might have like 430. Whew. So I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna ask for a grant from AWS.
Yeah, exactly.
We're gonna need a grant from AWS.
Now sponsored by.
Yeah, shout out to AWS, man. So no, that's it. So the cool thing though is I like because in the old days they used to actually set up a AWS WAF. That's like $3,000 a month. So I was really looking for the WAF. So I think they made that optional. So shout out to AWS WAF. That's like $3,000 a month off the bat. So 430 compared to that is cheap, but like I said, I need to get that down around 200. So we're gonna see what we're gonna do. We're gonna reach out, and the managed service part of that, and that's really what we're gonna dig into next week when we start spinning it up. AWS Landing Zone is kind of like the development part. As you see, Chris was talking about this at the bottom. Complex and requires significant expertise. So that's the landing zone, fully customizable, owned by the customers, supported in most regions. Complete flexibility on account structure. That's where the complexity and requires significant. The cool thing they did is people were like, that's cool, but that's too complex. So AWS set up, and this is what we're going to talk about next week. AWS Control Towers, a managed service by AWS, fits blueprint and guardrails. I think there's 4 regions at the launch. So I think they obviously they're going to put in more regions. 2 non-configurable core accounts, no SS, no Amazon VPC in the core. Self-service guided by deployment and configurable through a GUI. So I think this is where Chris wants to be. This is where PBO wants to be starting out. Now we can get, once we get our expertise, we can start doing some fully customized, but to get our feet wet, we definitely want to step into AWS Control Tower and get comfortable with that before we step to the raw AWS Landing Zone. All right, that's like programming. I was generating out code. Then once I start programming for 3 or 4 years, then I start customizing it myself. Without the box, I start generating code. So we're going to generate stuff with AWS Control Tower. So that's where we want to be. Any questions on that, Chris? I threw that shout out to you for that. I think that's where you want to be, right? You want to be in the AWS managed version, a little less complicated.
Yeah, yeah, just point and click.
Point and click. So that's what we're gonna dig in, and hopefully not next week, but the week after that, we'll start building stuff. Once again, I need a couple weeks to figure out this $400. So see what that's gonna feel like, though. So that's it. Let's go back to the top. See what my paces are in there doing. But once again, if you're using landing zone or control tower, this is what you're setting up for your base installation. All right. Once again, you got your networking. Shout out to Ty. He was asking me some network questions. I was a little thin on it, but that's it right there. You got your transit gateway, because these accounts tell you which VPCs it can run on. Right. And a lot of times you're gonna have multiple VPCs in your account. So once again, which account can get to what VPCs? Kind of like you said, kind of like a switch, and which VPCs in your transit can get to certain external VPCs and shared VPCs. Once again, we control all that inside your transit gateway, and once again, what can see what in your OUs. So, and once again, we're going to start digging down deeper in there. Once again, it's shared. You get your Active Directory, your collaborative tools, your package, and your container repositories. Once again, you got your management account, your audit accounts, log and archive accounts. Once again, your workload accounts over there. Your networking accounts. I think a lot of times we take this for granted. All right, this is gonna be set up. Somebody has to set it up, right? Who is that? Then at the bottom, once again, your shared account. So I think once again, and I agree with Chris, that's complex. But that's why we get paid. That's why Chris gonna be, future six-figure earners once you master this. You
That
don't
sounds
get
like a lot of job responsibility.
That's why you get paid, homie. You got to pick one or the other. You got to pick one or the other. Either we getting paid or not. Let me get in. I done left the chat. Let me see what's going on. See. Chris, you coming from Sunburn? You do look a little burnt up there. Shout out to Chris. Gonna get you that SPF 30, homie. What you doing, man?
Yeah, no kidding.
Protect
30
yourself.
minutes in the sunlight. That's all it took.
That's all good. Who is the Pacers winning? I forgot all about this. How you let me forget the chat, man?
I mean, hey. I figured you were already struggle streaming. Might as well, make it fun.
All good. I'll take care of that, Sierra. We're gonna figure out the less expensive route on that. Once again, I'm gonna try to get us some credits from the for the Amazon guy that was in CPN. I will do it live. That's my goal. I'm down. I got 5 on. Shout out to that's a classic. I do. That's a classic. I'm old. That's a great classic. I might play that. Is it appropriate for GRC team? Is it appropriate? Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. Is it appropriate for a GRC team without cloud experience to create policies in cloud account? Yeah, because a lot of times if you're doing this, it's going to give you the best practices policies that should go on those accounts, right? So it's going to tell you, if you're doing a web account or application account or security account. So it's going to give you best practices. And if you look inside AWS, they actually have job roles in there for you to pick out for certain policies in there. So no, I think that's appropriate. Now, granted, it'll make it a lot easier if you have experience. A lot of times what happens is you're not going to create the policies, to be honest. There's two type of, if you're talking about policies for security policies that you're going to put on an account, the cloud engineers are going to do that. You're going to assess them to make sure they're correct. Now, if you're talking about policies like policies, like for NIST or CMC type policies for auditors, you can do those, because a lot of times they're going to just say, we're going to lock down the cloud services, or we expect to have, because they're going to be high level. we expect to have centralized logging inside the cloud. Now that could be CloudWatch, Splunk, whatever you want to do it, because you're not going to name technologies in those type of policies. Chime in there, Chris. You're a policy expert. If you think I'm saying something wrong, you can chime in.
Hey, you're the one here with decades of experience.
Hey, but I got PBO got some bad habits. No, PBO got some bad habits and stuff.
I'm just trying to soak in the knowledge, because it's just like with cloud, I'm like, and I mean, you talked before, it's like this, like I'm just soaking this all in. And it's like everything is convenient now. You can just do it centralized, and then just like with your compliance, your GCRC, you can just do it at a click of a button, just boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
And it's just third part. Most of it's just third party and just third vendors and stuff.
Because if you look at that, as audit accounts, your security hub's going to run all your vulnerability scans, your compliance scans. It actually has your threat modeling built in there, AWS config. We did that in a couple of videos. You could pick, I picked NIST 800-53 in AWS, and it tell you what percent you're compliant and what findings. So a lot of that is going to build out for you.
Yeah, and in regards to that previous question, I think yes. So you, especially as GRC for cloud, you definitely got to be familiar with this. So depending on the size of the company, maybe you are the one going in there and doing this, or maybe they'd send that off to the engineers. But I think it's going to be way more common that you're going to be the one going into the AWS account to review it, at least.
Oh, to review it 100%.
Yeah.
Review it 100%. A lot of times, the problem is I could create them, but a lot of times is the engineers own it, right?
Yeah.
Who's going to break it?
Right. So for me, and I don't, to be honest, I don't want that responsibility. Now if I assess them and they're wrong, I'm gonna tell them why they're wrong. But I don't know if I want to create. And if you look up there, we did. Let me get to that particular slide. We went over the account management, and I think that's really built into the process, right? So when they build their accounts, all of that's going to get set in those accounts.
So it pretty much does it for you. It's just pretty much step-by-step SOP, where if they don't do it this way, it's automatically going to correct. I give you that error. Hey, you're supposed to create this account. So it's like all I'm doing is just making sure the controls when I go down to the checklist are being implemented. It's just all I'm doing is just looking over the shoulder or just doing the checks, like boom, 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 and that's it. And I'm just sitting back because pretty much it's the engineers or the sysadmins doing all. It pretty much walks them through it in the lowest common denominator.
And to be honest, if you do it right, they shouldn't be doing it. That should be onboarding. So that really should be the help desk. I got somebody coming online. They work in accounting. They should go into the service catalog. This accounting person, he goes in this particular OU. Usually there's accounting OU, and all this other stuff gets built when they click on a button, right? Because this is what we told them to build. So once again, you get this account, you get in this organizational unit. This is your job responsibility. So these are all the things you get access to, right? What network you're going to be on to do your work. Those networks communicate to our. So really, it should be really the first line that says this person's onboarding. This is what they need. Their boss says this is what they should have, and they just go ahead and hit the button. It should just create them and put them in the group there should be. And the group is really the OU in this particular.
Yeah, it's just pretty much plug and play. Just put their information in. And
so
enable their account, and that's it.
Yeah, so all that should be, like I said, those job functions should be already created because we know these are the job functions in our company. Now, if you're doing a special assignment, that might be a little different, but straight onboarding, it should be this department, this is their job role, go through this account vending machine, hit a couple buttons, and it automatically sets up, right? But it's multiple stuff, right? This is AWS. They might have, I'm sure they're going to have some on-prem. They're going to have some Office 365 stuff. What SharePoint file should they get, right? So there should be another vending machine for your Azure side too, right? So it's more than just really AWS in a large company.
And speaking of that, especially with cloud, because you have third vendors like Microsoft, they're giving them all like Office, Adobe Office, Excel. So it's pretty much without all this stuff in, you need to have the third vendors tied in, so that way they can give you the leasing for the software or application.
Oh yeah, I'll export there.
Pretty much, I got it. It's just, cloud's the future. Cloud is the future now.
Oh shit! I used to say the cloud is now, man. I'm late. I gotta get there.
Cloud's now.
So and he brought up a thing really that's built in there. There's actually AWS licensing manager, because all this stuff you got to make sure this person has a license to run it, right? So as part of your SBOM, right, when you build those things so you can assess them, what software products are these persons assigned to? So there's actually a license manager in there too. They're not showing it, but in the you got to tell them they have these licenses, because they're gonna see if you got licenses for the software you have them using. So, were you chiming in, Chris? Were you just contemplating?
I'm just here to keep you busy. That's all.
Oh, I'm busy.
I mean, come on, PBO.
I'm busy. But shout out to Sierra. We get with you. PBO, shout out on the 5 on it. That's actually a classic rap song. So shout out to her. But PBO gonna check it out. I'm gonna reach out to my man Derek from C-SPAN and see if I can get some AWS credits. So we try to help grow your platform. I know you already work for $1 trillion. We trying to add $1,432.22 into the trillion.
Exactly.
So can we get a little discount? But once again, that's it at a high level. I got to see if anybody have pressure. But really, especially from my point of view, this is the part where I need to kind of upscale to get to that best of breed for a federal installation inside AWS, right? And like Chris said, and I even thought about it, I was like, ooh, there's a lot of stuff in there. Like, I'm comfortable with a lot of it. I need to get my firewall and my VPCs are a little weak, especially with the transit gateway. So that's what I probably work in the second part of 2025. I got to get on this CISSP. Chris keeps beating me up. I got to schedule that test.
Come on, PBO, slacking.
So yeah. So once again, I've done videos on all the services individual, but that's stovepipe. Now, once again, we put them together with best practices, best architecture. Once again, this is what you're going to assess in most federal clients, because this is what they're recommending. And most feds are going to let's hit the button. This is what they're selling. Because the cool thing is, if something breaks, since you're one of their best practices, you can easily call support and get assistance with this. Right. So this is definitely out the box. So and if you hire their consultants, this is what they're going to spin up in there. If you try to get some of that, me and Chris was looking at, what was that L6? What was it? $370,000 job. It was something crazy like that.
Yeah, I think it's like E6 and up is like over 300K.
Yeah,
their pricing tiers are insane.
Facts. That was security engineer though. Shout out to lady. I don't know if that was compliance, that was engineering. But once again, this is what we're trying to master and get comfortable with. Because once again, if this is the best practices, so if you're in an org or a mid-sized company, this is what you should spin up. Because if somebody comes behind you, he didn't set up, you like, this is best practices. This is what AWS recommends. This is not what PBO recommends. This is what AWS signed off on, right, for that particular thing. Shout out to my man Shango. Let me know if you got any other questions, man. I sent you that email. Shout out to Shango.
So what you're saying, PBO, is push it back onto AWS, saying it's we're doing this because they told us we had to.
Nah, you want to grab a little bit of it, because if you push it out on them, then they get out of money. So you got to take a little bit of it and run with it. But it's easy, because the cool thing about it is, if you go to YouTube or go to their documentations, this is what they're talking about. If you do anything inside really ChatGPT, you talk about control tower, landing zone, this is the answers it's going to give you to fix it, because once again, this is the best practice of what AWS recommends. All right, now that price though, obviously though, if you're a big government company, 430, you pulling that out your sock, right? If you like me, you labbing it for fun. That's a different ball game, right? So that's a little different ball game. But once again, shout out to my man Todd. That middle part, once again, definitely is a networking part. The VPC. So we're gonna dig into that probably in a couple of weeks once we get in control tower, just to get a better understanding of the network. I might reach out to my man Network Bruh. He does a networking YouTube channel, and that's what he does for a living. So I might have to bring him in, get PBO a little assistance on the networking. My subnetting's a little weak, so I have to get Network Bruh in here to help us out.
Send it.
Let's again, we'll hang out and see if any questions. My man Jupiter's in the house. Shout out to my man Chris Whitlock. I don't know if you want to drop your channel in the chat. Most people know
I was going to ask, what time on Friday are you live streaming?
I don't know yet. I'll be saying stuff and it never happens. So shout out to me. I was thinking about doing third-party assessments. I get a lot of questions about that, especially from a NIST and federal perspective. I was going to talk about masters, MSAs, master service agreements. That's where you put your security questionnaire, your security addendum, your security exhibit. The MSS says legally this is what you need to do for your company to be able to do work for us, right? So what does that look like from a third-party assessment? A lot of times, third-party assessments, I'm saying, are you doing these things in your assessment so we know you're doing best practices so you can do business with us, right? So it's a lot of times we feather this into our legal documents. So what would that be? Are you using AWS best practices? Are you using Landing Zone? Are you using Control Tower? Why would I ask those legal questions? Then I know you're doing best practices. If I don't ask those questions, you could be spinning up something that won't scale, won't work, something that you really can't handle, especially if it's something you're going to give to us after you're done, right? Something we buying from you, right? So a lot of times you want to get that legal and documentation. A lot of times you want to do that in milestones too, legally, so you can sign off and pay people on milestones and not wait till the end. But you want to have that in legal documentation. And so once again, you can work with your legal, with your procurement, all right? As third-party assessment, you're working with multiple departments. What you got, Jupiter?
And you said the key words, especially if you're dealing with the government or you trying to get a government contract, they're gonna want to see those going all the way back prior to you pre-certain those documentations and your plan of action or your milestone on what you did to rectify. Because a lot of people don't know the government before you even get the certification, they do like go before they got that certification because they want to see where you own it. So.
Shout out to my man Before the Billions. We had an excellent conversation on AI in the court system. Before the Billions got me fired up earlier. So shout out to him. I'll drop the link if you want to come up. I know he's very busy. Shout out to my man at ATL. I might try to go out there and get married or something. Nah, PBO joking. He's too old for all that. In the great city of Atlanta. So shout out to my man. Drop the link if you want to come up for PBO go to bed. PBO old. He almost 60, man. Might be my time. Might be my time.
You could always do it earlier, PBO.
I keep thinking about it, man. You keep pushing me. That you never let that go. It's 8 o'clock your time. It's an hour later, but I feel
we should either do it at like 4 o'clock in the morning or like 7 p.m.
Nobody's in my time zones, but me and you probably. But me and you. Shout out to Chris early in the morning.
I'm in your time zone.
I usually get up and go back to sleep because I don't sleep well. When I got 50, I wake up at 4. I used to get up and study for my cert and go back to sleep. Shout out to me with 5 AWS certs.
Something I was going to mention too is that Simply Cyber now has a Central Illinois local group in Discord now too.
Okay, I might have to go check them out. I got to finish that course for Dr. Ozier fire me. Put in a key word. Make sure you stay with me, Chris. He like you, man. Say PBL still working on it, man. Work with him a little bit. Shout out to my man. Sound like Before the Billions. There he is. What's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Hey guys, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Oh, dude, I enjoyed that stream. We were chopping it up earlier on, so I'm doing all right.
Yeah, PBL, thank you again for popping up. Do appreciate it.
That was good. That was a good question, man. Shout out AI with the court system. Somebody tried to do a AI attorney, and the judge was not happy. So we just pivot off about that. The biases of the court system versus the bias in AI, and what does that look like, and which one I prefer. So we just kind of chopped it up about it.
Yeah, exactly. And then you were talking about AWS.
Oh, facts, man. AWS got something for everybody. So shout out to AWS. They're Bedrock. I'm actually thinking about doing some cheaper models for stuff. And I said this years ago. I think somebody's gonna buy LexisNexis. That's what the lawyers do for cases. I think somebody's gonna buy it for $1 billion, and that's gonna be the gold standard to train your AI off of. I really think Microsoft's gonna do it, or AWS, because they got that in there. They got the $1 billion in their SOC, man. So that's no money for those guys. and that'll be a cool domain to try to dominate.
Yeah, man. And then you were talking about compliance with that too.
Facts, facts.
I'm like, compliance in the law system, compliance in healthcare, because you
Mhm.
also because the court system is one type of compliance, but then sometimes you have medical, you know, um, autopsies and stuff like that, or
Oh, facts, facts.
yeah.
Just shout out to Chris. We had the High Trust Me. I don't know. The High Trust assessor was on his channel, so we were breaking that down from a compliance standpoint for the HIPAA High Trust. So that was kind of interesting. Which I think you should change the name, Chris. You need to give him a shout out, man. Change the name because they say High Trust. I'm just thinking of HIPAA and health. They're trying to use it for different workloads, like we were talking about up here. And I think what they're doing definitely could be the name for me is just a struggle because I just only thought about that in healthcare. Um, I appreciate you, Ty. Once again, we're gonna kind of shut it on down. Right there is what we were talking about. Landing zone. That is the best practices to set up an environment for federal government work. This is what they want you to set up. And of course, in your workload, if you run a health, you're gonna have a healthcare or a HIPAA healthcare. I do a lot of IRS, so you probably have some special IRS workload. Shout out to Before the Billions. I'm sure you're gonna have a data warehouse in there, some data lakes as a workload. That type of data engineering, data pipeline is gonna be in different workloads. But once again, those workloads are gonna get to your transit gateway, and who could get to that type of work once he build those lakes and those dashboards, what OUs can see those dashboards, right? That's part of this whole compliance. And at the top, you might have I would actually create a management, not a management account, because that's the management of the organization, but maybe a management of divisions of who can see dashboard accounts, right? So, and then once again, transit is who can see what and who can get to what, right? Once
Yeah.
again, this is the best practices. Go ahead, B2B.
I was gonna say that Power BI, making sure that people have access to see
Yeah,
those dashboards.
yep, 100%. So we probably would set up a different account, probably a dashboard account, and that dashboard account probably would go to the C-suite and those managers and view them. And two is the shared account is Active Directory. So we would take the Active Directory, sync it, and who has access in Active Directory will be able to see it in AWS, right? So you wouldn't have to recreate those OUs in AWS separate from your on-prem. You just would sync them up there. Right now, would probably be
Mhm.
part of your shared services VPC.
PBO, I was talking to one of my colleagues earlier today, and
Mm-hmm.
he was talking about how he's a manager. He was talking about how like he has a team of full stack engineers, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't like the data engineering work. I thought that
No.
was strange.
Oh no, no. Why would you? I'll tell you why is they don't respect it because they think moving data is grunt work. They want to do the analysis, the analytics, and the cute stuff.
Yeah, I was sitting here like I enjoy data engineering.
Right. I that's what I grew up on, but I can tell you because I work with a lot of analytics, especially a lot of analytics with PhD. They think the data magically gets over there. Dude, it's got to get over there clean and optimized and then inform you want it, right? They think that's grunt work though. A lot of them don't want to do
Mm,
that work. They want to get over there when it's clean and they can run their systems, they can run their statistics, they can run their whatever, their whatever statistical analysis on it. And the
yeah,
new thing
the
is
API development.
no, the artificial intelligence engineers and machine learning. They wanted all the data match up, then they can train their models. But they don't want to get the data over there, right? They want it all to be clean, and they can do the cube models on it.
Well,
Yeah, I thought that was
yeah,
strange, man.
No, no, no. That's the
yeah. The
cube.
easy parts. Come on,
That's
PBO.
yeah. See, yeah. They think that's for them though. That's like anything. They think that's the brain part of analytics. They think getting over that's the grunt work. Right? You got to move it, clean it, make sure it's right, make sure it's not tainted, right? So once again, they think it's magic. They just want to pull it into their Sage models inside AWS and just run all their statistical analysis and train it. That's grunt work. So now, before the beans,
Mhm.
it's always been that way, man.
I just did a workshop on AWS SageMaker.
Okay, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's, so it's interesting you bring that up.
Yeah, yeah, because I try to learn all the all the different services, and I know that's their machine learning and AI models in their workbook. So I ran a couple small labs on it just so I can understand it. Because like you is, I got to make sure from a compliance and governance, you got to move it. I got to make sure you encrypted it. I got to make sure you hash it to make sure it didn't get changed. If it got changed, we need to know why, right? When you got it over there. Now, are you putting it in a queue? Are you using SNS? Or, are you using their data lake to transform it into the framework they want? I just got to make sure nobody mess with it as you do it in a pipeline, right? But me as a compliance, I got to understand kind of what pipelines you're using so I can make sure it's valid and make sure it's being secured correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Doesn't that
now,
rope you back down to like security by design?
yeah, a lot of times, well, it goes yes and no. Is a lot of times it depends on the CTO because I try to teach them security. You calling their baby ugly, man. So a lot of times I just say like we're talking about from a AWS, this is best practices. So if you do something outside of this, we got to have a conversation, right? I'm just too old because I've almost got it. I told you I almost got in fist fights with architects because they said I didn't know what I'm doing. I'm like, but this is AWS best practices, right? So I don't call people babies ugly anymore. I'm too old for that. If they're in these boundaries, I'm cool. If you get outside these boundaries, you got to tell me why. And you got shout out to B-Dub. You got to sign a risk assessment because you're causing risk to our org now.
Yeah, once their name gets documented on something like that, oh yeah, not a problem. You just got to sign this, acceptance that you're accepting this risk.
No. Say it right, Chris. His boss got to sign it, not him. His boss got to sign it. We running it up the chain because if I argue, me and you is probably close to the same level. So if
TBO's out for blood.
No. If your boss sign off on it, I'm cool, man. I'm cool. I'm here to let me help you, man. If you don't want to change it, your boss just got to sign off on it. I'm cool. I'm not arguing with you, man. Your boss just got to. Once you said people start backing up a little bit, they start backpedaling. Well, are you sure? I'm like, your boss got to sign off on it, man. I'm cool with it, man. But now once again, that's it. Shout out to B. Yeah, what you think of SageMaker before I start shutting down? B2B. What's your thoughts on SageMaker?
I mean, I thought it was cool. I mean, like it's something that we're going to be bringing in to our architecture
Yeah.
coming up in the next few years.
Yeah, that's
So
AWS best practices for that type of service. So I did a video on securing it, and securing it, like you said, securing a pipeline to it is not bad because once you get in SageMaker and once you're doing all their ML and doing their models and training it, but the lake, the transformation, how you get it to SageMaker, right? A lot of that's from a pipeline standpoint. For me, in governance is pretty much the same for a lot of things, to be honest. I'm gonna give you the last words, B2B.
hey, PBR, I appreciate you having me up here, man.
All the
Looking
time.
forward to talking about some more data pipelines and learning more about AWS.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
actually thinking about getting a data engineer associate certification, man, because um, most organizations, if they're not doing data engineering, they kind of doing data engineering because you got to get the data somewhere, transform it, and put it somewhere. Database, S3, SageMaker, some service. So you kind of doing data engineering movement some. So I'm actually might get their cert. I've been debating it.
Yes, sir. Yeah. In AWS, right?
Yep. They got a data engineering associate cert. It just came out. I looked through it.
Hmm.
There's a lot of services in there I'm not super familiar with. Hold on,
Yeah.
Chris. Hold on, Chris. Jupiter, what you got?
I'm about to drop off. You have a good
Okay.
evening.
You too, man. You always welcome. I appreciate you, bro. Go ahead, Chris. I can see you looking
Oh yeah,
perplexed.
I was just gonna ask.
Yeah.
So is that gonna be before or after the CISSP for the data analyst?
After the CISP. It's got to be because if I do it, I won't be able to take it this year. So my plan is I'm going to sit for the associate architect probably in 5 weeks. I think I'm gonna sit for the developer after that in 2 weeks. Then I'm gonna jump all into the CISSP.
You look like you're in physical pain thinking about it.
No. I just kind of made up my mind to be honest. No, I'm cool. It depends on if I fail one of them or not. so we'll see. Like I said, I just passed the SysOps 2 months ago. I didn't have that one. I have the associate and the developer. I think they both expire in June, so I think I'm gonna renew those. Then jump on the CISSP. That's the one I'm a little worried about. I might have to take a couple times, man. That's kind of brutal.
Yeah, you got this. But yeah, thanks for streaming tonight and so forth. I look forward to your Friday stream. And
I'm debating. You go on Friday at 12, right?
Friday at 11 for our open stage AMA. That's it. That's all we got on Friday is 11 a.m. Noon Eastern.
Okay, I was gonna say it's at noon Eastern, so I might go 1. I don't know. I'm debating. Well, I need to probably give you more space than that because you go over
I
some.
think you should go at 1.
So
I think that'd be perfect, and then we could just send it straight over to yours. I figured it out on YouTube, so we can actually send it directly over to yours.
I saw that. You're gonna have to show me that. I'm hurting a little bit. I gotta get a little better in my restreaming.
But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and sign off. Thanks again, PBO.
I appreciate you.
And GRC Mafia. You guys have a great week.
I appreciate you. So y'all can definitely check me out and study GRC. You can definitely check me out on Before the Billions. You can definitely check me out this Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm hanging out with Combo Courses. We gonna chop it up. So I'm all over these YouTube streets. Shout out to me. I'm all over the YouTube streets. I want to thank everybody for joining me. Hopefully the Pacers are winning, so we can shut it on down. But once again, I thank everybody for joining. You know how to get me. If you're on LinkedIn, just hit me in a LinkedIn. If not, catch me at ProfessorBlackOps@gmail.com, or just put a comment on one of my videos, and I usually see that. I'm so smart, I usually respond to 99% of the comments on my video. Sometimes YouTube doesn't send that to me, but most of the times it does. Once again, I want to appreciate everybody for joining me. You could definitely check me out on replay. I'm out. PBO, he's about to go to bed.